So Ian Garry appeared on Ariel Helwani's show last night, and to be honest with you, there's so much that you could cover in terms of this. The biggest takeaway from it is the fact that he exposed himself for being one of the biggest hypocrites in the game. But for me, there's a couple of bits that kind of flew under the radar. I'm not talking about him reading off a script. I'm not talking about him not accepting any responsibility for his actions and blaming everybody else. I'm actually talking about a few instances that I brought up in other videos that have been 100% validated. I'll get to them towards the end of the video, but let's just say that he's all talk and he never really wanted this, and that's what I will show in this video. So before we get into it, if you could like, subscribe and share, I'd really appreciate that. Cheers. One of the highlights and one of the main factors that kept coming to the surface during this interview was Ian Garry being extremely soy, talking about toxic fandoms and MMA are toxic. Let's have a listen.
The truth is, people love to hate. The internet, Instagram, Twitter, all of it is a very toxic place, and especially MMA media. 99% of it is very toxic.
This is something that I spoke about in my last video in terms of Ariel Helwani and Luke Thomas. Two of the biggest soy boys in the game, two of the biggest names in the MMA media scene. These guys are promoting and pushing this far left progressive bullshit, and people like Ian Garry with very malleable brains, they will take that stuff in and actually run with it if it benefits their narrative. So here, Ian Garry believes that he's the victim of toxic fandoms and MMA is a toxic place to be. Where is he hearing that, you'd imagine? Well, it's coming from the likes of Luke Thomas and Ariel Helwani, and then you have a lot of other ex-fighters who don't want to lose their job talking about the same trash. Come on, get real.
1 minute they love you, the next minute they hate you. We've seen it. The hate is ridiculous, the love is amazing. Either way, they're giving me content and they're tuning into my fights.
Either way, they're giving me a bunch of content, and he's smiling, but really he's crying and tearing up inside because he doesn't believe any of this. We know it. I'm not getting into him reading off the script. We know he was looking down reading off the script. He didn't just come up with that stuff. It was written there for him. All these one-liners about Sean Strickland. It was all written. We're not getting into that. It's been covered already by a bunch of people. I don't need to get into that. I'm just going to poke away at a few other little bits and pieces. How hypocritical is what he just said there? Like, I mean, you could stop the video right now and be like, okay, that's enough to prove it, right? That's enough to prove why the fandom has turned on him. I mean, some of the questions that were asked by Ariel Helwani were decent in terms of trying to get Ian Garry to maybe hold up his hands and say, yeah, I got that wrong and I got this wrong. Never happened though, man. Never happened. He gulped down a big glass of copium and blamed everybody else. That's what he did. So Ariel asks Ian Garry here, how is the relationship with your wife and how are the two of you dealing with the fallout of the internet coming for you, as he said before?
Just by the sheer amount and obsessive, like just the number of which people were attacking us, and just the constant notifications of people talking shit and people posting videos and all of this nonsense. But now, I mean, now we've come out of this stronger.
It looked like he was reading there again, and it looks like that he was kind of surprised by the fact that he has to say that we came out stronger, because he looks down and he goes, we came out stronger? That's what it kind of looked like, to be honest with you. How are they stronger? The dude is a broken man. The dude is a broken man. And you know what? I might as well just say it now. And I'm not going to pinpoint names or anything like that. It just seems to be the consensus that Ian Garry is going to go on and be a champion. That he's going to go on and be this elite champion. And I can't figure out for the life of me how anyone can jump to that conclusion after him running away from the UFC 296 card because the fandom was turning against him. Then he comes out and does interviews like this a couple of weeks later, which across the board people are saying it's hypocritical, delusional, and a little bit sad, and you shouldn't really be talking about Sean Strickland's mental health because, bro, looks like you're suffering bad. And if you're going on a live podcast where you know there's going to be millions possibly watching, and you're reading off a script and everything that you say is hypocritical of what you just said 5 minutes ago, you're in a bad position, bro. So you're not stronger. Like, calm down. We're going to jump here to a part that I think is very important, something that I want to talk about, something that I believe that I've been vindicated in. I've spoken about it in a couple of other videos in terms of Ian Garry not really wanting to engage in this media storm, not really wanting to partake in defamation claims and all all that sort of trash. And if you actually want to talk positively about Ian Garry, if this guy had the balls to stand up and be a man and stick to his guns, which he says here and he has said in maybe 2 other videos, and I have said it in a couple of videos, then he would be in a way better position now in terms of people loving him or being a fan of him, because he does say that he doesn't care whether people are fans of him. He's only here to have a good time and disrupt people and have a laugh. Pathetic, but whatever. He does care. He does care. That's why he's a broken dude. But if he had just stuck to his guns like I knew that he was capable of, coming out of that first video where his wife brought to his attention that people were talking shit online and he didn't want to talk about it. He wanted to bang on and fight. But no, she inserted and made sure that there was soy everywhere.
It's a lot of hurt. It's a lot of hate. And people react differently to that hate. I'm someone who will kind of forget all about it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't care about it. But then Layla's like, no, we need to talk about this. We need to talk through it, because talking through it will eventually enable us to be able to get over it better together. And that's what we ended up doing. We ended up sitting down and talking about it and understanding what.
Okay. Absolutely crazy. If there was ever an advert to be made for this like weak-minded mentality that we all exist in right now, this is it. We have a fighter, a guy who jumps into a cage and fights and beats people for a living. His wife brings to him a load of trash from Instagram and Twitter and YouTube, people in their spare rooms, people in their mom's basement. She brings all this shit to him where people are just chattering and chirping away. The dude wants to fight, the dude wants to train, the dude wants to be world champion. And this older lady who has inserted herself with massive power, massive influence over him, forces him to work through it and to process it and to sit down and talk about it ad nauseum, to the point where he gets physically sick and can't fight. And I said this in a number of other videos. When she came to him in that initial Instagram video, you can see him going, I don't want nothing got to do with it. Go away with it. I don't want to talk about it. She forced it. She forced it. She forced it. And if this dude ever sees a video like this, surely there's that little tinkling in the back of the brain where you go, man, he might be right. Like, my initial thoughts were to block out all these muppets that are talking shit online and actually fight. And if you think about it, imagine Ian Garry actually did that. Ignored the advice from the beautiful, wonderful, the most intelligent PR person on the planet, Layla and Ali, and actually took his own advice and backed himself. Where would we be in terms of a shitstorm of media? Where would we be in terms of his career? Where would we be in terms of people loving his fight style and loving that based chattery of like, my wife wants to process stuff and I'm just going to be like, get the fuck out of here. I'm not talking about shit like that. Let's go and roll. We'd all be Ian Garry fans, I think. We're going to jump here to this bit where, again, he refuses to admit that he was wrong in any way, shape or form.
So, you know, over the past 2 years or so since you entered the UFC, I've heard you say to me and others, like, you want to be a disruptor, right? You did that in Boston. Even in July, like, you were a hot topic because you wore the T-shirt with the mugshot and whatnot.
Yeah.
Was there any part of you that came to the realization like, hey, if I'm going to be a disruptor, I'm going to have to deal with what comes with that?
No. Because
you have to imagine what's going on in his head in that 25-second pause there where Ariel says to him, if you want to be this disruptor, if you want to wear t-shirts of guys having their worst night of their life where they're humiliated by some bad mistake that they made, you put it on a t-shirt for no reason other than your wife thought it was going to be hysterical. If you're going to attack Neil Magny, turn his words around, really try to affect his family life the way you keep banging on about toxic people are trying to do to you. And the question is, do you think that that warrants any of the heat that's coming at you, and would you have changed it? And he goes, no. Cool. Nice one for that, bro. Way to win the fans back over, lads.
My job is promoting my fight to the best level I can, to show up and have the most fun at the fight night I can. I'm not viciously assaulting and attacking people's families.
Again, I don't need to cover what he said there. It is shocking. It is shocking, but we've seen it so many times now that there's pointless me covering it. Everyone else is doing it. What a hypocritical statement. I don't viciously attack people. What the fuck were you doing to Neil Magny? You wouldn't let that bro speak. What's happening? What are you talking about, man? You're mental. I want to jump to this little bit here where he talks about Colby Covington because I think it's extremely important, the word that he uses, and it pretty much explains and defines him as a human being right now.
The world is going at a very toxic level. I mean, the best example is he's an absolute piece of shit for doing this, but it's a perfect example. You've got someone like Colby Covington who isn't trash talking, he's desperate. He used that sore point in someone's life to try to stay relevant, to try win a mental battle.
He is explaining how Colby and Sean Strickland are projecting to the world trauma from their past. We don't understand what sort of trauma Ian Garry has gone through in his past, but obviously there's something there if you're a 21-year-old and you start knocking around with a 40-year-old. And then you exclude all your gym mates, all your friends, all your coaches, and you take advice only from her. You lock yourself into your apartment, you won't speak to anybody. She becomes your new teammate. She becomes your manager. She becomes your guiding light. And it's in a very sinister and disgusting way many people believe just looking in from the outside, but again she projects herself and inserts herself into your career, so it's hard not to talk about her. And you're talking about these guys as if they've done something that you haven't done like 2 months ago. Fine, hypocritical, let's get on with it. There's one word in here that really stands out and defines Ian Garry's interview right here. It defines his Instagram presence, it defines his whole career right now, and the word is desperate. He's absolutely desperate. His wife, her ex-partner, his PR team, they are working round the clock to try salvage what's left of his career. Unless he goes out there and beats Jeff Neal, Colby Covington and Sean Strickland, I think this guy's in trouble. I don't believe he's going to be champion. I don't believe he's got an elite mindset. And I think that the word desperate is literally what people are going to think about when they hear the name Ian Garry. I'm going to jump to this little bit here. I mentioned it at the beginning of the video. It's something that I spoke about before. It's something that I pulled up before. And listen, take this one with a pinch of salt because it is a subjective opinion. But I'm going to just come out and say it straight away. Ian Garry is all talk. Ian Garry is not going to come up to someone on the street and beat the shit out of him. He ain't Youre Masvidal. He's not that guy. So when you hear these stories about Ian Garry is one of the toughest guys on the planet and these trolls don't know what they're dealing with in terms of talking about him because he'll beat the shit out of you. Nah, man. Nah. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. Numerous examples of when he could do that, but he didn't do that. You know, the guy that came up talking shit in an airport there one time, there's a video of it. Ian Garry's like standing back. He's doing a little bit of screeching and squawking, but he ain't jumping over 3 people trying to lash into this guy. He's not doing what Sean Strickland did against Dricus du Plessis. Nothing like it. So again, you talk a big game. You're great in the octagon where we have rules and we have refs, but I'm not sure whether you're that guy. Your wife wrote a blog talking about Ian's never been in a street fight. He's never punched someone outside of the octagon. Okay, that's cool for my wife to say that, right? Especially when I'm trying to exemplify this tough man career. Your wife just came out, opened her mouth again in a blog and said that, yeah, you've never even been in a fight outside, bro. What are you talking shit about? And then we jump to this clip here. It compounds it even more and I guess puts the nail in the coffin of the idea that this welterweight 6'3" guy is going to come up and do something. He ain't gonna do shit. Ariel asks him about when he came face to face with Sean Strickland, what exactly happened and what were you gonna do? We know what he was gonna do. He gonna do nothing.
When all this was going on, he mentioned seeing you at the PI. What do you think would have happened if you guys would have walked past each other?
I would have fucking talked to him for sure. I don't know. See, this is the thing. I'm not gonna start throwing hands with the bloke, because I'm a better person than that, and I would like to be above all the shit that was said, and just sit there and be like, I feel sorry for you, man.
Okay, so there we have it, out of the horse's mouth. What do you think would have happened if you had come face to face with him? So going off the premise that everyone says that this guy would beat the shit out of anybody out in the street, what would have happened if you came face to face with Sean Strickland? Nothing. Would you have thrown hands? No. Would your wife have wanted you to throw hands like she wanted you to do with Khamzat? Imagine the way that would have worked out. If you throw hands with Sean Strickland on the street, which we saw him with Dricus, biting ears, lashing into him, throwing elbows down, you're gonna get whooped, right? If you do it with Khamzat, holy smokes, man. So again, you look back at all the bullshit that comes out of this guy's mouth and his wife's mouth, it's all trash, man. How could you believe a word of it? Is he a tough guy who's going to do what it needs to be done out in the street? No, because he's bigger than that and he's better than that. And I think that I just would have a little conversation with him about his childhood. Awesome. Tough guy. And I guess we'll just finish up with the fact that Ariel keeps on pressing him about whether you think you did anything wrong. And his answer pretty much exemplifies the whole video.
Would I have changed the Jeff Neal thing? Fuck no, no, it was hilarious. It was fun. I had a good laugh with it. You know what I mean? That's the thing.
There you go. Fuck no, he wouldn't change anything. Ariel asks him, how do you feel about being the bad guy? And he's like, I don't want to be the bad guy. This guy is desperate, as I said earlier, to be the good guy. He is desperate to try spin this in a positive way. It's all backfired again. And as I said at the beginning of this video, I don't need to prove that he's hypocritical. Everyone pretty much knows that now. But there's other little elements in there that had to be plucked out. I'm going to beat the shit out of anybody who talks shit about me on the street, except for you've never done it. You've never been involved in anything like that in the street. And second of all, you had the chance, you had the higher ground at the very beginning of all this. If you had backed yourself, you would have been 10 times better off. But you didn't. You cocked. And this is where you've ended up. Let me know your thoughts down below. Hit like, subscribe, and share. Cheers.